Hey guys, JP here with Rock Crawler. On this episode of Rock Crawler Raw, we are going over what we call semi-spherical joints. Semi-spherical joints are joints that have or act as if they have spherical properties, but more or less act as if they're an OEM control arm bushing as well. The goal of a semi-spherical joint is to give you as much off-road capability as possible through articulation, but still provide the vibration isolation of an OEM bushing and sleeve with minimal to no maintenance. You know, we have to give Metal Cloak props where props are due. They were the first to introduce the Teraflex joint to the Jeep community. We have the Synergy arm here. They were the first to introduce from Whiteline the gyro joint. Synergy calls it the dual durometer joint because of its construction, to the Jeep community in the United States, and there's a bunch of other manufacturers also using that joint in their applications. The newer to market joint of the Teraflex IR bushing, which is slightly different in construction, and we are going to go over the construction in detail in a little bit, with a free rotating sleeve and more or less an OEM bushing. And then you have the Rock Crawler Adventure Series joint, which is as well uses a vulcanized rubber over a precision machine housing with a precision machine pivot sleeve. So it kind of combines a lot of features that you see amongst the other three. Now, in today's episode, since I tore my bicep at King of the Hammers and I'm not quite recovered from it yet, I have my lovely assistant, Bob. I mean, he's no Vanna White. He's not even Betty White, but we're gonna use Bob today. So follow along as we go through and dissect each control arm with very basic descriptions and functionality, so you can, choose for yourself what is the best control arm joint for you. Please note all of these control arms shown here, the Metal Cloak, Synergy, Teraflex, and Rock Crawler, are all new control arms out of the box, so we are comparing apples to apples as you would get them day one for your application. So here you have the OEM control arm, which is a vulcanized rubber over a steel sleeve. The vulcanized rubber bushing is bonded to the steel sleeve, so as you can see, there is no free rotation whatsoever. So here we have the OEM control arm locked in a vise, mimicking what it would be like if it was bolted into a control arm bracket on the axle. Bob is going to apply a load with a fish scale so you can watch. This fish scale is rated at 100 pounds, so you can see what kind of misalignment capabilities the OEM control arm bushing has. So here we are at 100 pounds. You're seeing roughly 11.4 to 11.7 degrees, 11.8, 9, 12.2 degrees of misalignment. The OEM bushing is trying to pull away or distorting heavily from the OEM tube that it's in. That's just one of 16 OEM bushings that you're relying on using the OEM control arms. Go ahead and relax, Bob. But as you can see, even when it comes back, the OEM control arm bushing is not recovering to its neutral state. It is recovering back to about 4.5 degrees, which is all deformation of the OEM bushing inside the housing. He's applying a 100-pound load again. You can see the tremendous amount of distortion and the sleeve trying to rip out of the OEM bushing at that 100-pound load to get that articulation of approximately 11 degrees. With the high loads, no free rotation, an OEM control arm bushing has no place in a high performance aftermarket suspension. So here we have the metal cloak Teraflex joint locked in the vise. So Bob is again going to rotate the arm. Go ahead, Bob. And it's free rotation. The little bit of noise you do hear is from a high friction material rubber rotating on the steel housing. The degree of friction is a little bit, high, but very, very little to rotate the arm. And here we have the articulation load required to reach the stated misalignment. Metal cloak states 34 degrees total misalignment, so we are looking for 17 degrees in one direction. Go ahead, Bob, give it a rip. Keep going, keep going, keep going, she's getting there. A little more. So at 100 pounds, we're getting 14.5 degrees of misalignment out of their joint, which seems to be about as far as we're going to get. So as you can see, as the Teraflex joint articulates, it does require bushing distortion like the others, but it recovers very well. So here we have the Synergy control arm in the vise showing the dual durometer joint. Now we're using the Synergy arm because they were the first to bring this joint to market, but there are many other companies calling it a gyro joint or dual durometer joint, whatever they would like to market it as, but they are all the same joint. So Bob is going to show the rotational aspect of the dual durometer or gyro joint. And as you can see, it's got a nice free range of motion in rotation. And Bob's got a live one on the reel here. He's going to show you the force and articulation of the dual durometer or gyro joint. As you can see, the force isn't extremely high at 100 pounds. Oops, the fish pulled back a little bit. Bob's going in for a swim. He's achieving 13.3 degrees at 100 pounds. So again, that's not a tremendous force required for articulation. So as you can see, as he's articulating, you are getting the deformation of the multi-layered polyurethane layers inside the dual durometer or gyro joint, and they recover nicely as well. Now we have the Teraflex IR Control Arm locked in the vise with the metal-to-metal bearing on the bottom, and Vanna Bob is going to show its free rotation. It has a nice free rotation for suspension movement. Now Betty Bob's got the the Teraflex IR arm on the fish scale, and we are going to show its articulation, force, and or ability. As you can see, at 100 pounds, it's getting 6.7 to 6.8 degrees, much like, actually less than an OEM control arm bushing at that force load with the same style deformation as an OEM bushing. So as you can see, Bob is trying to articulate the Teraflex IR bushing. It undergoes the same cycling characteristics that the OEM bushing does, with tremendous amount of force required and bushing deformation under articulation. So here we have Vanna Bob with the Rock Crawler Adventure Series joint locked in the vise, just like everything else. And he's going to show you the rotational capabilities of the control arm and the joint. As you can see, the precision machined sleeve rotates extremely freely in the Teflon lined metal back bearings. Very similar to all the other control arms in rotation. Okay, here we have Betty Bob back for a quick back workout. He's going to give the RK Adventure Series joint a pull test. Go ahead, Bob, give it a rip. So as we're approaching 100 pounds, right now he's at 80. He's got to get a little more in there. Betty White's pretty old, you know. He's at 17.4 degrees or 17.5 degrees at 100 pounds. As you can see, Betty Bob is still articulating the Rock Crawler Adventure Series joint, and just like all the others, it does go under deformation for articulation, but the vulcanized rubber overmold recovers very nicely. So as you can see from this very simplistic evaluation, you know, we're not going to tell you which ones are great, which ones aren't, which ones live longer, which ones don't. You know, the basic construction of this new classification of joint that we are calling semi-spherical joints. You know, another very important thing to consider is obviously, you know, you want to focus on your budget, get a product that meets your budget. But when it comes to replacing or servicing the joints, the Metal Cloak Duraflex joint and the Rock Crawler Adventure Series joint can be replaced with normal hand tools, you know, snap rings, vise. The factory control arm, the Teraflex IR, and the Synergy joint requires presses and fixtures to replace or swap out the joint centers. You know, I want to give Vanna Bob, Betty Bob, just plain old Bob, special thanks for helping out on this, because I'm still out of commission. But again, we hope this helps you guys, you know, pick the right control arm joint for you.